Welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa, where we talk about financial empowerment while exploring financial assistance available through local, state, and federal governments, each month with a diverse group of subject matter experts. Chicago, are you ready to get financially empowered? Well, we've got just what you need. Without further ado, give it up for your Chicago City Treasurer, Melissa Conyers-Irvin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa. I am here to introduce to you the City Treasurer of Chicago, Melissa Conyers-Irvin. Madam Treasurer.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you and welcome everyone to Money Mondays with Melissa. I am so happy today to dive into today's discussion, a very important discussion, the divestment from fossil fuels. And certainly I hope that you've heard a lot about it. Today we will provide more information in hopes that when you walk away from this conversation, you would even know more about what we have done as a city. The divestment ordinance that was passed in City Council in March was an important step for families of Chicago. Over the past 18 months as treasurer, I committed to divest in these type of companies that invest in fossil fuels, and to date, my office has divested more than $70 million through sales and maturities. Now, Chicago is a member of C40, which is a global group of about 96 cities, which represents more than 700 million people looking to address the climate crisis. A divestment from fossil fuels is a major step that really puts us among some of the most forward-thinking and forward-acting cities in the world. Now, with that in mind, today I welcome some of the key players to further discuss this issue and the work behind making this ordinance a reality. So let me introduce our guest on today. Our first guest today is Larry Koble. Larry is the president and co-founder of 350 Chicago, an affiliate chapter of 350.org, an international organization dedicated to fighting the climate crisis. 350 Chicago advocates for a swift transition to an economy based on clean, renewable energy with equitable treatment for people of color, fossil fuel workers, and frontline communities. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you for having me today.
We also have joining us Gavin Taves. Gavin is the Climate and Energy Project Manager at the City of Chicago's Office of the Mayor. Gavin works on equitable building decarbonization, focusing on program managing Chicago's benchmarking ordinance and retrofit Chicago. Gavin is also developing building decarbonization policies across city government that center just and equitable outcomes for low income, Black and Brown communities as Chicago transitions to a green economy. Welcome, Gavin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Madam Treasurer.
And rounding out our panel, you know we can't leave the women out. We have Laura J. Laura serves as Regional Director for North America at C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. In this role, Laura works with C40's 17 cities in the US and Canada to help advance climate actions from policies to mitigate emissions to strategies for adapting to climate impacts. Previously, Laura served as the Deputy Regional Director for North America, as well as the Land Use Planning Network Manager at C40. Welcome, Laura, to our panel today.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Now let's dive in so our residents can really learn about what divestment of fossil fuels is all about. So first I'll start with you, Larry. Tell us about your divestment campaign efforts here in Chicago and your motivation to really work so hard at divestments.
I'll go to the motivation first because that one's simpler and more personal. I have a son who's now 18, and when I started in this, he was 11. I heard an interview with a climate scientist, and it really scared me. And I have been involved in different grassroots organizations over the years, and I've always had a sensitive spot for environmentalism. And I started looking around for a group to get involved with, and I met Melissa Bryce, who is the original founder of the group, and she and I basically started working together and decided that fossil fuel divestment was going to be the campaign we were going to engage in. And so we spent about a year sort of researching it, figuring out how to do it, figuring out who to talk to. Then we started talking to aldermen. Scott Wagaspack was the first one we actually talked to, and he sort of pointed us in the direction of people who we should go to as far as political leaders, aldermen, the treasurer who preceded you, and slowly started having these interviews with, or actually discussions with aldermen, and sort of advocating the case for fossil fuel divestment and why it is important. And so we spent basically about 7 years working on this. Patience is a good virtue, I do believe, and just stick-to-itiveness and the ability just to say, we're going to continue on this, could keep making our case. We knew that it would take a little bit of time because it was a new topic when we first got involved in it. And we basically believed that by persistence, we would eventually get to the point where we would present a case that would be understood and accepted.
And you know what, Larry, you mentioned a couple of things. One about Alderman Wagaspack. We definitely want to give acknowledgement to not only him, but all of the aldermen that really stood at the front line of this to say that they wanted to champion this. Certainly, we know Alderman Wagaspack, Alderman Haddon, Alderman Cardenas, as well as Alderman LaSpada were right on the front line, and many other aldermen signed on to the ordinance. And of course, it passed overwhelmingly by all 50 aldermen of City Council. So this was a very important topic. And Larry, you mentioned 7 years. I said in my comments to City Council, I took office 3 years ago, and 350 Chicago was at my doorstep when I came in. So you've been working on this for 7 years. But with my office, certainly under my tenure, we've been working on this for 3 years.
Correct. So, and I do want to acknowledge the aldermen, Alderman Maria Haddon, Alderman Daniel Espada, and Alderman Cardenas for championing this. They were the ones who on the second sort of, once you came into office, that our second go around attempted this, who said, yes, we're going to grab that banner and we're going to lead the parade and we're going to show that this is an important issue, and we're going to do what we can and push to make sure it gets through City Council. And we were very happy to find that we did get a unanimous vote on this. Looking back, I wouldn't have thought we would get a unanimous vote, but we were very pleased to have had that happen. And we're very grateful for the efforts of everybody who put into this, including our own volunteers, other leaders who basically said, you should go talk to this alderman. And one of the things we always got when we would talk to aldermen, they would say, what does the treasurer think of this? And once we knew that you had come aboard, we were like, all right, we think we got a shot here. And we were very happy about that.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely partnership. We did it all together, and certainly appreciate the dedication to this. And I'll mention something else before I go to my next question for you, Larry. When you mentioned about your son, who was 11 then, you said, when it started?
Yes.
Yes, I think about my daughter, and I mentioned this when I did an interview about divestment and fossil fuels, and someone asked me, is this the right time? And I said, it's the right time. And actually, we should have done it a long time ago. because when I think about climate change and the future for my daughter, I mean, it motivates me, Larry, to be honest with you. It absolutely motivates me. Our kids deserve a clean air. Oh my gosh. Like, it's not about us. It's about the future of our kids. And so I really can appreciate that.
Absolutely. That was the main thing, is I was looking at him, but also looking at his generation, that Gen Z group, and what their life was going to look like if we did nothing. And I didn't want my son to come back to me and, like, when he's in the prime of his life and asking me, Dad, you knew about this. Why didn't you do something?
That's right.
I didn't want that question coming back to me. And I was like, it's up to me, because I have an opportunity to work on this and make it happen. And I owed it to those, following generations to do what I could.
That's right. Now, let me ask you this other question before we go on to Gavin and Laura. How does fossil fuel divestment really fit into the overall transition towards a clean energy economy? I think this is a good question for residents that may not necessarily be familiar. I think we kind of talked about this, Larry, but really dive into how fossil fuel divestment fit into the overall transition towards a clean energy economy.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, the issue of fossil fuel divestment is just one prong in this overall strategy. It basically removes investment funds from fossil fuel companies, and thereby sort of encourages a transition and investment in renewable energy technologies, especially now that solar and wind over the last 3-4 years have come down in cost so much. Battery prices for battery storage and for EVs has come down a lot, and it's going to continue to come down over the next 5 to 10 years. And basically, it's going to help as part of that transition strategy to encourage, legislation at the. It's another part of that strategy to encourage legislation at the state level, encourage private investment in these newer technologies. It's going to encourage education and training to be created for those frontline communities, people who have been a fossil fuel worker, people who've been disinvested over the last 30, 40 years, or for a good part of our country's existence, people of color, for those people to get trained to have these jobs of the future in solar, wind, battery storage technology. Illinois is poised to become one of the biggest makers of EVs in the country, due to the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that got passed back in last September. And so overall, it's this process of trying to create as many policy goals that will help to encourage this overall transition away from a fossil fuel economy towards a green energy economy. And fossil fuel divestment is just one part of that whole overall strategy. And we believe that our doing this helps make that space available for those further new infrastructure investments and policies to come in to bear and to come to fruition, so we can actually make this transition as quickly as possible. Because we know we've got less than a decade to make a lot of these efforts in order to basically get us to a new place. So we do have a green energy economy.
Wow, Larry, less than a decade to get this right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's enough time, but not enough time. That means that we need to definitely make certain we get started. So I'm just really happy about what we have done as a city in this regards to help. And so as we talk about we as a city, I'm going to bring you in now, Gavin, certainly in your role as the Climate and Energy Project Manager for the Office of the Mayor. And I definitely want to take a moment to acknowledge that our Mayor Lightfoot, really was a champion with this initiative as well. And I know 350 Chicago had challenges before our tenure. And so as the mayor came into office 3 years ago, and myself as well. And it was amazing. You heard Larry talk about it was just a difference from 7 years ago when they started championing this until when we came into office. And so I do appreciate the mayor really saying, hey, Treasurer, I think this is a great idea. Let's make certain that we do this, get this passed as City Council. So I want to bring you in now and really talk about what are some notable environmental city initiatives that are going on, especially in your role?
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Beyond the deeply exciting divestment, which is, I think, one of the more notable environmental initiatives the city has undertaken in many, many years, we have a lot going on. We're in a really good spot today to talk about some very exciting new initiatives and pieces of work that Laura and Larry, through their advocacy and through your work in pushing for this divestment, have kind of helped push the envelope on and helped lead us to. So on Earth Day, on April 22nd, the mayor's office and the city broadly released our 5 pillars for our new climate action plan. This is far and away kind of the most ambitious and bold response that the city of Chicago has proposed to fighting the climate crisis in the most equitable and just way, ensuring that the benefits of our transition towards a green economy, the economy that Larry has talked about and that you have talked about, Madam Treasurer, those benefits are being equitably distributed to the communities that have been so often left behind through these systems of disenfranchisement. And this is our attempt to undo those wrongs and also fight the climate crisis. Now, since 2008, we haven't had a new climate action plan, or CAP as we call it. But this year, we have designed a new plan that is boldly reaching for a 62% reduction in overall emissions by 2040. This is a science-based target that is rooted in equitable outcomes for these most disenfranchised and vulnerable communities in the city of Chicago. The plan itself is far-reaching. It's right now over 150 pages, so we're not going to take the time today to go step by step through all the policies. But what I will say is that this initiative is deeply exciting and was rooted in feedback from the community. We had thousands of public comments. We had dozens of interviews and stakeholder feedback sessions with both internal partners at the city to ensure that there was an all-of-government approach, as well as with external groups to ensure that we were listening to the community so that we would design a plan for the people that was by the people. Now, this plan includes a variety of really exciting initiatives. Number one, we're rooting this in lowering the cost for households and businesses through utility savings and expanding access to renewable energy. So this is ensuring that there is, a retrofitting of 20% of all buildings in the city of Chicago, and that we're going to be, on top of that, we're going to be ensuring that there's the installation of renewable energy across the city so that every day Chicagoans have access to this cheap, affordable, and accessible renewable energy that can lower their monthly electric bills. We're also proposing a bold plan to reduce waste in the city of Chicago, trying to drive a 90% reduction in all residential waste by 2040. And like Larry was talking about, these plans are part of this broad initiative to create jobs in this new green economy. All of these regulations and policies that we talk about are going to require a major upskilling and training for all Chicagoans to engage in rolling out and implementing this new work. And this is the work that's going to ensure that we have a safe and livable and viable world for future generations. Larry talked about, his child, and Madam Treasurer, you talked about yours as well. This is the work that will ensure that not only are we ensuring that those folks will be safe in the future, but we're ensuring that they'll have good paying jobs too. jobs that are going to make sure that they have living wage opportunities and that there's real wealth building for communities that never had access to that before. So beyond the reducing waste and the jobs that are coming through that kind of policy, we're proposing a broad expansion of our zero emission transportation network. Now, for everyday Chicagoans, what that looks like is it's the expansion of our bus fleets and making sure that there are things like scooters and bikes and other opportunities for people to get around without having to use their car. And we're ensuring that those options will be affordable and accessible for all Chicagoans. We're also, going to be deeply investing in renewable energy across the city. We have this commitment to secure a 100% renewable energy supply for the city of Chicago's operations by 2025. But for the whole city, we have a plan to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2035. Now, these plans are massive and they require a ton of negotiation and intergovernmental cooperation. But with this plan in place and with the work that you have done, Madam Treasurer, and the advocates who have done on this call, like Laura and Larry, we're inching closer and closer to this just and equitable transition. And finally, and really most importantly, we're rooting all of this policy and these major climate action plan priorities in strengthening communities and protecting public health. We're coming out of a major respiratory health crisis. This crisis has it's uprooted a lot of the core issues that are related to environmental justice in the city of Chicago as well. When folks are dealing with asthma rates that are disproportionately high in Black and Brown communities because of industrial pollution, we have to come up with policies that are ensuring that those people are safe in the future as well, while we're encouraging decarbonization and the broad expansion of our very, very vibrant manufacturing sector, because we have the second largest manufacturing sector in the entire country. And we want to encourage that operation. And we want to make sure that those folks they have businesses that are in line with our climate action plan and are providing those jobs again for those disenfranchised communities. So that is the core of this plan. We're driving these deep and equitable emissions reductions, and we're ensuring that everybody's being brought along in the process. And I would encourage everybody here that's listening to go to www.chicago.gov/climate, and you can find out all about the plan. You can look at the pillars for yourself. You can read through it, and we encourage you to reach out to us and let us know what you think of it yourself. But this is, I think, the most exciting environmental initiative that we have going on, and it's really going to be our North Star as we move forward as a city.
Gavin, that was my next question to ask you. Where can they go to see, although you've explained it very well, so chicago.gov/climate to see the full, you said how many pages?
Right now we're pushing 150 in our draft form. I know, but there's a lot of good stuff. And
very aggressive.
The reason it's so long is because of how many people have provided feedback to us. It is from the city of Chicago through the residents, through the advocates, that we've been able to build this really expansive and bold plan.
And it's interesting, Larry was just talking about we have about a decade to get this right. And I'm listening to the T dates. And you all have tangible dates, aggressive dates, right? But tangible dates. And what I like about the plan that you mentioned, Gavin, that the mayor is not just saying, here's the plan. She's saying, here are some expected dates. And so I think that makes us to be held more accountable when we put out dates instead of just an indefinite amount of time. So I really have to commend you all on that. And let me ask you, when you think about this initiative, and these initiatives that the mayor has, the city has going forward, what do you think are the biggest obstacles in securing a greener future?
I really appreciate this question, and I think about this all the time, and I know that our office does extensively. So the greatest obstacle that we have in equitably fighting the climate crisis is ensuring that we have intergovernmental and interagency cooperation so that we have an all-of-government approach, because it will take every single lever that all of us are in charge of to press on in order to affect the change that we need to see in order to meet these really, really ambitious targets. And also, like Larry said, and Madam Treasurer, like you've reminded us, people are saying it's a decade for bold action, but there are folks who are saying it's 1 year. 1 year for the major action required to draw down our emissions and prevent the worst effects of climate change. So the greatest obstacle is dealing with overcoming these barriers in intergovernmental coordination. Now, we're in a really great spot right now. And I think this is a great conversation to have this chat, because what we've seen today through this divestment ordinance that was unanimously passed is various offices and various pieces of kind of the political machine working together in order to ensure that an ordinance is built with the input of the people, brought to the right kind of political players, and then having the entire city government behind it to get it passed. That is the framework. That is the format and the mode of success that we need to emulate and replicate across the city, because that is the way that we make progress. So I think that we have a great case study and example through your leadership, Madam Treasurer, and Larry and Laura as well, to show the city how we can overcome this major obstacle of intergovernmental and interagency action. And I also just want to plug here, because I think it's really important for the Chicagoans to know. There's a lot of money coming in from the Infrastructure Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law at the federal level. And this is really critical to ensuring that we can drive our way toward a more a clean and equitable future. And this money is going to be used to help alleviate some of these intergovernmental kind of obstacles. And we're looking forward to ensuring that that money is plugged into the projects and initiatives that best serve both the climate action plan, but also the needs of the community. So I just want to remind folks that we are hard at work ensuring that we have deep internal coordination to roll out our climate action plan and to take advantage of these federal dollars to make sure that people will see those investments on their street. When a new tree is planted or when a lead service line is replaced in the city of Chicago, just know that that is the effort of various departments who are trying to take advantage of federal dollars and partners within the city, and we're doing this in concert to ensure that we're rolling out these bold plans.
And also, I heard you mention, and we're going to move on to Laura, who's been patiently waiting with us. I know that she's into this conversation, though. But I was thinking about when you mentioned, Gavin, about the different agencies and everyone working together. This was certainly a hurdle for us, a major hurdle with the divestment ordinance, and it was everyone playing a part. And so we certainly can appreciate everyone playing a part to really make certain that this happens successfully. So certainly thank you for that and that information, very helpful. And one other thing that you mentioned too that I thought about when you spoke about disenfranchised communities, vulnerable communities, and Larry touched on this, and I know Laura is well aware of all of this. But we are, when you think about disenfranchised communities, I don't think a lot of times we actually understand how climate change affects disenfranchised communities more. And so before we move to Laura, I want Larry or you, Gavin, to really chime in on that, because some of the residents that are listening are from vulnerable communities. Oh, great, are from vulnerable communities. And so we just want to make certain that people understand how this affects them.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. And I really appreciate the opportunity to describe this in a little bit more detail for folks. So what we know is that in the city of Chicago, we deal with several forms of climate vulnerabilities. And while Chicago may be safer in some respects compared to coastal cities who have hurricanes and major storms, the city of Chicago is no stranger to major events. In 1995, the city of Chicago had a major heat wave that killed hundreds and hundreds of residents in a preventable but very, very deadly and extremely traumatic event. That heat wave is something that is not uncommon for folks who live in these specific what we call heat vulnerable areas. Now, what we know is that areas that lack greenery and areas that have a lot of pavement and asphalt and buildings that are reflecting the sunlight, these areas tend to heat up much more. And as climate change causes overall temperatures to increase around the world, those heat events, those major, the months in July and August when the heat becomes unbearable, for some people, those conditions become unlivable. And this is critical. This is a serious issue that we need to tackle head on as a city. Besides the heat, we have these major storm events as well. We are in the Midwest. We have major wind events and we have tornadoes that come into our area. And with those storms comes the massive flooding. And when people have housing that has not received enough support and it may be structurally unsound, that flooding can cause huge problems. When your basement floods and mold is prevalent in your walls and you have infestation and you have no money to invest because your community has been dealing with the effects of historic redlining and and issues related to kind of those trends, you may not have the money to for instance, repair your basement in total or tear out those walls and remediate the mold problem. And so the mold can cause health issues. And these are just a couple examples of how, a major climate event or a climate exacerbated event like a major heat wave or a storm can have these deadly consequences for folks who are living in homes that are particularly vulnerable. And so what the city is doing is taking a targeted, racially equitable approach to investing all of these dollars that we have into the communities that need them most. And oftentimes we find that those are both Black and brown communities because the kind of the history of systemic environmental injustice has essentially relegated certain communities to live in areas that are more environmentally dangerous. And the city is taking a direct approach to ensure that we are getting feedback from the community to know where we need to go, and then also investing our dollars in a targeted way so that those interventions are equitably ensuring that we are, improving climate resiliency and decarbonizing at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, for the questions that we have, I mentioned earlier in my introduction that Chicago was a member of C40, which is a global group of 96 cities, global, representing more than 700 million people, really looking to address the climate crisis. And we have Laura J., who's with us. She serves as Regional Director for North America at C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. So welcome again, Laura. And I have a few questions for you. I really want to ask you, among your organization's membership, who do you think is a current impact leader? And what are they doing that makes you so excited, certainly in your role?
Well, thank you, Madam Treasurer, for having me. And it's really, truly such a pleasure. And I will say, as a new resident of Chicago, I'm so excited about all the work that your office is doing, all the work that Gavin's office is doing, the mayor. It's really, truly a pleasure to not only be living in the city of Chicago, but really be helping contribute to all this great work that's happening. So as you mentioned, we're an organization, we work with the world's largest cities, and really part of our objective is innovation and ambition and action can happen faster at the local level and needs to happen at the local level. And that can really inspire work globally. We work with cities like Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, but also Seoul and London and Johannesburg and Rio, Buenos Aires, Sydney, Australia. Really, truly, we are a global organization working around the world, really trying to create platforms for cities to share and inspire each other, but also really impact other levels of government, whether that's globally or nationally, and other key players, whether that's major businesses or other kind of, global entities that have a huge role to play in this. And I think that this is where the work, not only of C40 and 350.org, to really take that work that's happening locally and aggregate that and show the impact globally, and really the important role and leadership that cities play in the global fight against climate change is so, so critical. And so I think just note, Madam Treasurer and to Gavin as well, all this work gets really, shown into the global picture of how what's happening locally in the city of Chicago, and the work exactly that Gavin says to really make the lives better of all those people living here in Chicago. It makes an impact to the world's ability to address climate change. So I think just wanting to put it in with that global context, and I will say there's so much exciting stuff that is happening in Chicago. So I'm not going to touch on those because Gavin already talked about it, but did want to touch on a few examples of some things that are happening around the world, and a little bit locally, that I think are really exciting and kind of getting to that next level of, hey, here's some other ways to think about it. And I think that the first one really speaks to one of the main barriers that Gavin mentioned around really that coordination that has to happen within city government, within cities, to further, we kind of reference it in terms of mainstreaming, but further ensure that climate decision making gets made throughout kind of all levels of government. And I think that this, also to kind of Gavin's point, there's so many benefits that are realized as a result of this, whether it's air quality and health, whether it's lower utility bills, whether it's the creation of jobs, that it's not just about addressing climate change, but it's really about decisions that are going to help the livability of the people of the city. So one example of work that's happening in Oslo, Norway, but also we're now working with a set of cities around the world on this, is called climate budgeting. And so this is really about integrating climate decision making into the budgeting process for the city. And so that looks very different in different cities, which it should, but the concept is kind of the same of, whether it's that, infrastructure or different decisions have kind of amounts of carbon or amounts of emissions that they're, allocated, or that there's a different set of questions and a different kind of set of information and considerations that need to be made at every stage of a budgeting process. And really what's that doing is it's fully integrating those decisions through existing city processes instead of creating new ones and separate ones. And so the city of Montreal in Canada, just very close by to us, is creating what's called a climate test. And so any infrastructure decision that has to be made in the city has to go through kind of a series of questions, whether, what's the impact going to be? And this also touches on jobs, it touches on equity, really to ensure that all of those mechanisms of the city are really contributing to the impact of climate change. And so I think that is really exciting work that's happening, and we're hoping to kind of work with some cities to create frameworks and mechanisms to better support other cities around the world in implementing similar things, or taking inspiration from those to implement what is really applicable to the city. Some other exciting stuff that's happening kind of in the realm of transportation. There's a lot of work happening on transitioning electric vehicles, both within the United States and globally. There are some cities that have fully electric bus systems in China. There's a lot of cities in Latin America that are working towards that. Some exciting stuff that's happening in the United States is really around that we're doing some work on, is really around transitioning delivery vehicles and trucks towards being electric vehicles. And we know that these deliveries not only have a significant impact on air quality currently, but particularly air quality in vulnerable communities where, exactly to Gavin's point, have historically been disinvested in, but also where a lot of the routes have strategically, historically been put through. So we're doing some work in Los Angeles, for instance, to really work with small business owners to help them in the transition of their delivery vehicles to electric, because we know that as the Amazons and the others are able to invest lots of money in this, the transition is going to be harder for small businesses. And so really wanting to work with them to ensure that they have access to the new technology and the cleaner technology that isn't necessarily going to cost them more money, to really be able to do that. And so Los Angeles is piloting electric vehicle delivery zones, EV delivery zones. And so again, part of that work we're doing is ensuring that small businesses have access to the equipment that is needed, and really can be the first ones transitioning that, and then kind of pushing the larger companies along the way. There's a lot of exciting stuff, I will say, happening in building retrofit, some of it within Chicago itself, but though not a C40 city, I do want to mention that there's some really exciting work happening in Ithaca, New York, where they're looking to electrify all of the buildings in the city. And so, Larry touched on this a little bit, but, electricity is a much cleaner source of energy and has a much easier direct connection to renewable energy. And so this is kind of a transition that many cities are looking to make, and really about ensuring that that electricity is still provided at a cheap and affordable rate. And so they're working to replace the equipment in all of the cities in Ithaca to really make that transition. And I think that this is a really exciting kind of, everybody's watching the space. How is the city doing it? And I think it kind of speaks to the scale and the urgency as well that we've been talking about a little bit. Another kind of one that I'll mention is cities like Toronto is really working, they have certain authorities over what buildings can do, but I think that there's some exciting stuff happening in really the collaborative and the facilitator role that local government can play. And so they're bringing together the largest commercial building owners in Toronto, which represent over half of the building's emissions in the city, to really work with them on pathways for getting to carbon neutrality for their businesses and for their footprints in Toronto, and really kind of not only helping them all kind of collaborate as a cohort, but really working with them individually to support that transition. And I think that leadership that cities can show in that is really critical for us being able to meet the goals that we need to.
This is so interesting. I wrote down some notes, Laura, because you're saying so much great stuff, especially all around the world. So first, let me say why I'm excited. You're to be a part of this global organization. And you said you live here now in Chicago, Laura?
I do. Mm-hmm.
That is exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm loving it.
That is absolutely great. So for the regional director for North America of C40 to live here in Chicago, I'm telling you, great things in Chicago, great people in Chicago.
It's all very true.
Yes. But when you had mentioned, and for those that are listening, I hope they heard those I call trigger words when you spoke about equity, when you spoke about jobs, how when we talk about clean air, clean energy, when we talk about divestment of fossil fuels, all of this, some people may wonder, why should I care? Well, equity, jobs.
Absolutely.
Gavin spoke about infrastructure. You spoke about infrastructure, Laura, and we're talking about money. We know the amount of money that's coming for infrastructure. We talked about transportation. We all know, I'll tell you, I was in a ride share last week of an electric vehicle. And I was so amazed at this vehicle, right? And I was talking to the driver, and he was saying that the amount of money he spends to recharge his vehicle is nominal. It's like pennies compared to what we pay to fuel our cars. And so it is, it's also cheaper. It can save a lot of money. So he may have paid a little bit more for the vehicle versus maybe a vehicle that I have. However, overall, when you think about the long-term costs, the savings, oh my gosh, it was like pennies.
Well, and I think especially right now when gas prices are so high and the reality of the market of gas prices being so volatile to kind of the global geopolitics that are at play right now. I think that there's a lot of movement, and you'll hear this from the Biden-Harris administration right now, and a lot of investment, as Gavin said, from the bipartisan infrastructure bill in EV charging. So we're going to see a lot more investment, not only in cities, but also being able to drive just differences, right? And so your ability to really have that electric vehicle and not have what's called range anxiety. So that's kind of the anxiety that you may feel if you aren't able to charge your car. And so I think that and not only that, but the market, if anybody's watched the Super Bowl the past 2 years, it's been all about commercials on electric vehicles. And so, I think that we're going to see a lot more availability of cars and more affordable cars, electric vehicles. Really, we're already starting to see that, but I think that the next 3 to 4 years is going to be exponential in that in the United States. And, you already see that in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, really, too. So I think that is going to change very significantly in our lives in the next few years. And we should all be very excited about it.
Our kids they're going to all drive.
They're going to be like, what's a gas car?
Right. Like, what are you talking?
I have a 2-year-old, so he'll be like,
you can count on it. She or he will be in an electric vehicle.
Exactly.
So last question for you, Laura. This has been such a great conversation. But I wanted to ask, what other green initiatives are really gaining wide adoption in U.S. cities? I know that you all are a global organization.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some other green initiatives that are really gaining wide adoption in U.S. cities.
Yeah, so, a few things, and I did touch on, a few of them, but I think, so one thing that I know that is top of mind in the city of Chicago, and Gavin can, touch on this a little bit, but really, cities in North America are essentially built, right? There's new construction happening, but a huge amount of the kind of the work that needs to get done locally is really around transitioning of existing buildings. So the building's already here, right? So those are office buildings, those are multifamily residential buildings like the one I live in, and single family homes. And so I think cities in North America and the United States are really trying to think creatively about how do we not only put in incentives, so really provide money to help make those, so to support that upfront cost. And there's work happening here with ComEd and other local utilities, as well as other places around the country to do that. But then really, how do we push things a little bit further? And so I think that there's a lot of like carrot and sticks types of things that are happening across the country that I think are really exciting. And really kind of pushing and showing what's possible, because it is such a significant area of work that really needs to happen. And so, I think that you'll see kind of everything from requiring buildings over a certain amount of size to do things to, again, providing technical support to low-income building owners to really help them make the transitions and the changes that are really necessary in their home. And so that work, I think, is really exciting. I will say there's a lot of exciting stuff happening on transportation for a country that I will say, like, historically, when I talk to my colleagues, doesn't build a lot of new public transportation. We have a number of cities in the US who are building new public transportation. The city of Austin is building their first public transportation system in Texas. This was a voter-approved bond. So the people of Texas, or the people of Austin said, we want public transportation, and this is really important to us. And so it's called Project Connect, and they're just getting underway, and it's going to be, supported by the city, supported by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Cities like Phoenix and Los Angeles are expanding their transit systems. And all of that, I think, is really exciting. And then existing cities like Chicago and Boston and others are really thinking about how do we take our system and make it better and expand it. So this is the electrification of buses. In Boston, they've just actually made 2 of the lines on the bus systems free. And this was really not only an indication of, hey, these lines are ridden the most by low-income residents, where that $2.50 makes a big difference. And the ability for them to get to work and to move around the city and not have to pay is going to be a game changer for them. And it's not going to be that much for us. And so Mayor Wu has used recovery funds money from the American Recovery Investment Act to do this, to put that kind of upfront cost. And what that does is it gets people out of cars. So it's really supporting that, but really ensuring that there is access to those people who that might be a barrier for them. And so I think that that's really a really important and bold move, and exactly speaks to that intersection of equity and climate that we've been talking about. They're also in Boston they've just purchased some of their first electric school buses. School buses are hugely polluting vehicles historically, with driving around some of our most vulnerable children, which has huge asthma impacts. And so investing early in some of these new technologies around electric school buses, I think, is really going to take off, and places like Boston are already starting to do that. So that kind of stuff really excites me, and I'm excited to see other cities, not only around the country but around the world, really make those transitions and quickly.
I'm excited. Electric school buses?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. And as you said, kids asthmatic and you name the issues. Oh, wow. That's exciting. And you know what? You just said something too about, and I made a note of this. It's a game changer for residents and really not much for us. So why not help? I thought about when you was talking about those particular lines on the
yeah,
buses that are free. Wow. And honestly, you'll be amazed at how many people have challenges in even getting to work. Oh my,
exactly. Yeah,
wow. So that's like they don't have to think
they
about
don't
it.
have to think about it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, it's really exciting. I think that part of this is, hey, we're going to do this for 2 years and really measure what the impact is, right? Like measure how this changes in people's
Yes.
lives and be able to then make the case to make, these permanent on these two lines or whatever it may be, because they have such a significant impact to the people who are riding them. And I think part of this gets to the ability to measure impact in new and creative ways and redefine what impact is. And I think that that's part of it as well, and a lot of the exciting work that's happening.
That is exciting. A lot of great things. Thanks for sharing. And before we conclude, I want to bring back Larry, then Gavin, and Laura. If there's anything else you'd like to add before we close, this has been a great conversation. I know the residents have learned a lot. That's what this was about. We love Money Mondays with Melissa, where we can just take some time. We did the ordinance, and a lot of residents may not have exactly heard all the details. Obviously, we went to City Council committee to talk about it in detail, but this was a good time for us to just talk so people can learn. So certainly, Larry, I'll yield the floor to you. Then following you will be Gavin and then Laura. You'll unmute. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I think one of the most important things that people just to understand is when we go make this transition to a clean energy economy and we electrify nearly everything, it's going to be great. We're going to have cleaner air in our house just by putting an electric stove. We're going to have cleaner air outdoors. We're going to have less neighborhoods that are polluted by making this transition. And I think that's the one thing that I think has been missing is this understanding of that things will be better once we do this and we make this transition away from fossil fuels and towards solar, wind, battery storage, electric vehicles, eventually green hydrogen that is being developed so we can do things like make concrete more green, or we can have shipping be done more green through green hydrogen. There's all this work that still needs to be done, but as we make this transition, it's going to be great. I think that people just don't understand that as well as they should. It's going to be a better world to live in. That's how I want people to think about this.
Should I jump in, Madam Treasurer? Okay. Larry, that was a great tee up. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to the Treasurer for her leadership and her office's leadership in this divestment ordinance. The Office of the Mayor has been proud to be a partner and supporting this work. It's been extremely exciting for all of us to take this bold step towards this green future that we want to live in. The critical thing that I want to leave with folks after today's conversation is this note that our transition away from fossil fuels and towards a future that is safe and reliable and friendly and livable for all residents will bring with it these enormous benefits like Larry was talking about. On top of there being, cleaner communities and healthier air and folks not having to deal with the pollution, I want to talk about again. It's the jobs and the equitable benefits that all of us are going to be able to grasp from the transition. This is going to require a massive effort to get us to decarbonize our economy and to ensure that we are being more environmentally friendly, just broadly. But with that transition comes opportunities to train in a new industry, to ensure that folks who are leaving our community colleges and our apprenticeship programs are learning skills to, for instance, do these major building retrofit programs, because buildings are responsible for 70% of our emissions. Imagine this new workforce that will develop when we have to go through the process of ensuring that we're decarbonizing all of these buildings. That requires new folks to join the fight, new folks to be trained, and then to create these long-term jobs that provide living wages and wealth building opportunities like we talked about previously. So we have this idea of what fighting the climate crisis looks like, but if we can rephrase things a little bit for people to talk about how this will impact you in your wallets. This is about saving you money at the end of the day. It's about ensuring that you have better access to job opportunities. It's about ensuring that transportation corridors and ways to get around the city are easier and cleaner and safer for you and your family. That is what we're talking about here. And that is the fight that's ahead of us. And when we can ensure that future for the city, we're all going to be left better off. It's not just this next generation. It's the rest of, the future of the city of Chicago for, the next 100, 200 years. This is the transition that will make us safer. It'll make the city more equitable, and it'll ensure that we have a livable environment to live in.
Well, not much more to say than that, because that was so eloquently said, Gavin. And I really second everything there. And I think the last thing I'll say is for everybody listening, half the step is learning. And so, thank you so much for listening and really taking the time today. And I think that something like the issue like climate change can feel very overwhelming at first, right? You don't really know what it means and what to do and everything. And so I think educate yourself, but really, take exactly what Gavin said and break that down of not only do my decisions as an individual, what can I change about those, because it does have knock-on effects, and really think about that. It is really important, but also don't let it overwhelm you. Really, there's things we can do, and there's ways to get involved. As Larry said, he felt a little overwhelmed by it and did something about it. He felt concerned for the future of his son, and so as a kid, and so I think just think about it that way and really turn that into productivity. And so really commend Madam Treasurer, you and everyone in your office for all the great work you've done, and thanks again for inviting us.
Thank you. We have a really great team in the Treasurer's office, and I do want to thank them. This was like I said, a huge hurdle for us all to really focus on divestment of fossil fuels, but we've been able to do it. And I really want to thank these organizations that are on the line, and even other organizations. Before I finish with that, though, I want to bring up some points that you all stated. I'm going to bring it all together. Larry, Gavin, Laura, when you talk about, oh my gosh, we would just be better. Wow, like we would just be better. And we talk about equity. We talk about jobs. We talk about saving money. We talk about safe, reliable, livable. This clean energy means so much. And it's not only for our kids' future, it's for us today. I mean, we would just be better. And then we spoke about hundreds and hundreds of years to come. It's for a livable environment. And so if you're wondering, what does this mean to me? Hey, it affects us all. And so I certainly want to thank the group. This is exciting. I'll tell you, usually when we have Money Mondays with Melissa, we have like way more questions than this. And as you can tell, we've already surpassed our hour, because that's how passionate those that are on this panel are about this topic. We knew that they would just talk and provide great information. And so we only had a few questions for them, and they far surpassed even our expectations. So you can see our excitement in this initiative. It's because it's exciting when we think about what clean energy really does for all of us. So thank you to Larry Koble of 350 Chicago, Gavin Taves from the Office of the Mayor, and Laura J. from C40. We really thank you for your work, your dedication. This has been valuable information, and the work you all have done to really make this historical ordinance a reality, and certainly to my team in the Treasurer's Office. It really was a proud day for me to be the champion, the one that would stand up to say, we are going to do our part in the Treasurer's Office of Chicago, and we want to divest from fossil fuel investments. And so it was a big day for us, and I certainly want to thank everyone that was involved. And as you've heard, the change is now. Chicago is the third largest municipality, and I'm certainly proud of the work we are doing in this initiative. And so going forward, if you have any questions for us about this ordinance, or if you need to learn more about what we're doing in the Chicago Treasurer's Office, be certain to visit our website at chicagocitytreasurer.org. No, I'm saying that wrong. ChicagoCityTreasurer.com. Sometimes I say org because I'm thinking about cityofchicago.org. That's the website. But for Chicago City Treasurer, it's ChicagoCityTreasurer.com. Make certain that you follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I wish all of you a wonderful, safe, and healthy week. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in to Money Mondays with Melissa. We hope you enjoyed today's session and found value in the topic of discussion. Follow Chicago City Treasurer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay on top of all upcoming events. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Chicago Treasurer's Office at 312-744-3356 or visit www.chicagocitytreasurer.com. We'll see you next time for Money Mondays with Melissa.